As a father of two young kids, every decision I make, from the groceries I buy to the vote that I cast, feels weightier than it did before. I'm planning on voting for RFK Jr. in the 2024 presidential election, a decision that some of my friends and family see as throwing my vote away because he's running as an independent. However, I firmly believe that voting for an independent candidate isn't a waste. Rather, it's a vital step towards long-term change in our political system, something that I deeply care about as I think about the world that my children will inherit. The notion that voting for an independent candidate is a wasted vote is pervasive in American politics. This idea stems from our historically two-party dominated system where the winner typically emerges from one of two major parties. The fear is that voting for a third party or an independent candidate will split the vote in a way that could lead to a less preferred of the two major candidates winning. However, this perspective fails to acknowledge the broader impact of supporting an independent person. All too often, this fear results in a candidate being selected rather than truly elected because they align with the true values of its citizens. Voting for someone like RFK Jr. is more than just a protest against the two-party system. It's an affirmation of support for policies and values that align with my beliefs, not just a choice between the lesser of two evils. It's about showing that there's a demand for these values and policies at the highest levels of government. We cannot let the pervasive pressures that surround us to force us to lose sight of the policies and the values that we believe will change the world for the better. My children have a future, and I must protect that future, and I believe the best way to do so is to vote according to my own convictions. How could that possibly be considered a wasted vote? One of the most compelling arguments for voting independent is the potential to diversify the political representation that we see today. When new voices and new perspectives are introduced to the political arena, they challenge the status quo and often push major parties to reconsider their platforms and policies. This can lead to more innovative solutions to problems, greater accountability, and policies that better reflect the diverse views of all Americans. All too often, the two-party system digs their heels in on subjects and refuses to listen to the true desires of the voters. Consider today. Nearly every poll points to the fact that the average U.S. citizen doesn't want to go down the same divisive path that we encountered in 2020. Yet, they continue to give us a rerun of their chosen candidates. For me, it's clear that the establishment doesn't actually care about our thoughts or our values and instead prefers to push an agenda established by the few to limit the freedoms of the many. That is something I find particularly difficult to stomach as a father. In the case of RFK Jr., his platform addresses critical issues like diplomacy, world peace, supporting the middle class, border security, and so much more. These areas are deeply important to me as a parent, and I believe the perspective that RFK Jr. takes on many subjects are rooted in common sense, something that all of us should be able to get behind. While the two parties are stuck in the mud with their heads in the sand, it inspires me that Bobby Kennedy wants a healthier, happier, and more prosperous future for the generations ahead of us. Sign me up for a world just like that. Supporting independent candidates also sets a precedent. It signals to future leaders that Americans are ready for change and willing to step outside the traditional party lines to achieve it. This could encourage more qualified individuals who might have previously shied away, because there's too much dominance of the two-party system. We need them to step forward, and over time, this could lead to a political landscape where multiple parties and independents have a genuine shot at winning based purely on the merit of their policies and their ability to address the needs of the electorate. As is, the only candidates who flourish are the ones who obediently get in line and do as they're told. I don't know about you, but I don't like any president succumbing to that type of pressure. I believe that RFK Jr. has the tenacious spirit that's required to deflect the status quo and take us blazing into a glorious future. By voting for an independent, we're not just casting a ballot, we're actively changing the national dialogue and pushing for broader discussions on critical issues that major parties usually overlook. RFK Jr.'s focus on clean water, healthy foods, cutting-edge environmental policies, and addressing the chronic disease epidemic, for example, they bring vital topics to the forefront. Topics that have been completely overlooked by our country obsessed over identity politics and funneling massive amounts of taxpayer dollars to overseas conflicts. As a father, this matters deeply because it also teaches my children an invaluable lesson. They don't have to conform to a binary choice if neither option truly represents their values. By supporting an outsider in this election, I'm showing them that their voice is powerful and that they can advocate for genuine change, teaching them not to be confined by the limitations that others accept. This lesson in empowerment and possibility is one of the most crucial teachings that I can pass on to my kiddos. And hopefully, they will carry it forward into their families as well. Voting for RFK Jr. isn't just about wasting a vote like everyone wants you to believe. It's about investing in a future where politics are driven by values and policies that directly address the needs of the people. It's an investment in a political system that values diversity in thought and representation, which ultimately leads to a more robust, dynamic democracy. This isn't just for my benefit or even just for my children's benefit, but for the benefit of our collective futures. As this election approaches, I stand ready to cast my vote not out of fear or strategy, but out of hope and conviction for what I think our country has become. I believe we've become something that's afraid. That is about as anti-American as we can get. I think we've become something that is stuck in the mud and stuck on the status quo. That is anti-American. And I believe we've become a place where we can't freely express our opinions without being shot down or getting into an argument. That's not a world that I want my children to live in. I believe that just because Robert F. Kennedy doesn't fit into a perfect mold between Republican or Democrat, that doesn't mean that he's not worth voting for. I believe that this is the time to make a decision on who we are. Are we going to cower? Are we going to give in to what everybody else says that we need to do? Or are we going to stand up for what's right? Are we going to look at policies for what they are? Huge impacts upon the world that our children will inherit. That's really the route that I want to go. And when somebody comes up to me and tells me that I'm wasting my vote, well, I just ignore them. I know. Sounds easy, but it's not. But that's what I recommend that you do as well.